Greetings, this is a guide for the Alliance raid Syrcus Tower, which is part of the Crystal Tower series. I want to keep this one nice and short so you can watch it right before the raid. As such, I'll be skipping mechanics that are not going to be relevant for you. Overall, this Alliance raid is relatively simple, but there are some mechanics that you want to look out for. Before players get to the first boss, they'll have to clear the Ladder of Ascension. There's really just a bunch of adds here, nothing to worry about. If you're tanking, try and give some of the adds to the other tanks, just so it's not one person taking all the damage by themselves. The first boss is Scylla, or Scylla, who has a few mechanics that are now trivialized by gear. Because of the damage that players now deal, and also the damage that they can take with the new gear, even when they're scaled down, there are some mechanics that I'm simply going to skip. The best place to tank Scylla is halfway to the north. This gives all the other players some more room to deal with mechanics and improves general vision. Around the arena there are 3 lightning rods. You can pretty easily identify them by being a light on the side of the arena. These lightning rods have to be charged with orbs that will tether to players. If a player gets tethered, they should run to the lightning rod to get rid of the orb. If they don't do that fast enough, the orb will explode for raid-wide damage. There are also ice orbs that will target random players. These are undodgeable, there's no mechanic for you to do here except for soaking the ice. However, other players get tethered to flame orbs. If a player gets tethered to a flame orb, they should direct it through frozen players to free them. Around the arena there will be staves of eldering. These should be ignored by players. Do not DPS these as they take a long time to take down. Instead, just keep focusing down the boss. Around the staves there will be easy to dodge donut-shaped AoEs. Just stay out of those and you'll be fine. The staves will move around the arena as well, so reposition accordingly. After defeating this boss, players will have to deal with another platform of trash and various clones spawning around the arena without any real mechanics to them. The next boss is Glasya Labolas. Just like the previous fight, this one has mechanics that are skipped 99% of times, so we're simply not going to talk about them. The main tank should keep this boss in the center of the arena and move him around as little as possible because he has an AoE around him that can be easily dodged if you're standing at max melee range or max casting range. There will be adds spawning around the arena called clockwork rights. To take these down, one player will have to make the valiant sacrifice of being stunned for a few seconds. They have to run next to the clockwork right, which will CC them, but allow other players to DPS the ad. However, usually even this basic mechanic can be ignored because the numbers on this fight are now all wonky and it's relatively easy to do. This fight is what we call a tank and spank. After defeating Glasya, get ready for another platform of trash before finally moving on to Amon. This boss in his little opera house is probably the most challenging fight, however still relatively simple if you know the mechanics, so pay close attention to this one. First of all, the tanks should keep the boss in the center of the arena at all times and move him around as little as possible. Amon has a really strong cleave, so other players should avoid standing behind the main tank at all times. Off tanks should make sure to pick up the adds that appear around the arena, with the exception of the snakes that we get to in a moment. Like in the Scylla fight, occasionally a player is going to get tethered to an orb. This time the orbs are purple and they have to be dragged into one of the adds to shrink it down. If a player fails to run away from the orb, they'll get shrunk themselves and the damage gets reduced. Around the arena there will be various experimental byproducts, the slimes. These have to be focused down hard, because if they reach the boss in the center, they'll inflict a debuff on the entire raid. So drop whatever you're doing and focus on these first. Later on, a few players will get turned into frogs and they'll get chased by the snake adds that spawn on the side of the arena. The frog players should simply kite these around by running away from the snake ad. After a while, a few random players will be targeted and frozen. Shortly after, the boss will start casting Curtain Call, which has to be avoided by hiding behind the frozen players, thereby breaking line of sight to the boss. After the AoE goes off, you're free to move around, and by then the fight should be pretty much done. Moving on to the final boss, Xande. Like most of the previous bosses, this one should be tanked in the center of the arena to give the players more room to deal with the mechanics. The boss will cast multiple AoEs that are relatively easy to dodge, but dodging those is an absolute priority because they hurt and they will knock you back. A few times throughout the fight, players will have to soak meteors. What that means is that around the arena there are circles on the ground that players have to stand in. At least one player has to stand inside of one of these, otherwise they will explode for raid-wide damage. As long as one player is standing inside each circle, the damage is negligible. At 2 points throughout the fight, 70 and 40%, The boss will disappear and players will have to DPS down these Starfall and Stonefall circles. The small ones should all be down before focusing down the center circle, although it doesn't hurt to already put some damage on the center one. After the boss returns, there will be a stack mechanic where a random player from each party gets targeted with a marker. This damage should be soaked by all players from that party or any nearby players. However, again, the damage this mechanic deals nowadays isn't that big, so it doesn't matter if there's not all players from one party inside the stack marker. In fact, you can see me doing the mechanic wrong right here, because I should have been stood inside that marker. If you get a stack marker above your head, the standard procedure for dealing with it is usually to walk into a pattern like you can see it on screen right now, because once the AoE drops, it will create a platform that players can stand on. Players should now stand on the platforms created to dodge the upcoming mechanic Ancient Quagga, which the boss will cast immediately afterwards. Once the damage is dealt, the platforms will disappear and players are free to move around again. From here on out, the mechanics are just going to repeat until you defeat the boss. That's it for the Syrcus Tower. If this video helped you out, feel free to leave a like and subscribe for more videos like this, and I'll see you in the next one. Now off you go and have a nice rest of your day. Peace.